Hello everyone and welcome to the next episode of the random loot tutorial. This time we're going to be adding stats to our items and then displaying them in the UMG as well. We're going to use the gear score and in a formula we'll use that to decide on what stats to use. But other than that, it's generally going to be quite random. So let's take a look at where we were when we left off. So last episode we had the screen and if we hover over an item we can see a loot score but nothing else. So we're going to take that UMG and we're going to add a whole bunch of stats to it. So we'll need to firstly create those stats themselves. So if we go into the item struct, you can see you've got rarity and loot score, and here we're going to create all of the information. Instead of adding 6 different variables, we're going to create a new struct. So Control and Space, open the drawer, right click and go over to Blueprints and Structure. And we're going to call this stat underscore struct. Open up that struct, and here we're going to create, just for argument's sake, 3 stats. We're going to call it attack, we're going to call it defense, and we're going to call it speed. All of which are going to be integers. Compile and save. And then we can close that tab down. Now in the item struct tab, we can add a new variable, and we're going to call this item stats, and we're going to call this a stat struct variable. Compile and save. So if you go to the default values, you can see we've got the attack, defense, and speed there. In our spawners, because this is where we're getting all the information for the item itself, we need to now create our stats. So we're going to create a new function and we're going to call it generate stats, and in the input we're going to put in a loot score, which will be an integer, and we're going to add a return node, and in the return node we're going to add the item stats, which are going to be of the stat struct variable type. So just from the off, what you can see is you're going to take the loot score, do some code, and then it's going to turn into a struct of stats. So how are we going to do this? So what we can do is we can add a for loop, and for the loop we can add a random stat to one of these. So we can go random integer in range 0 to 2, which gives us 3 different options, and we can switch on int 0, 1, 2, and then if if 0 is 1, we can add a local variable, we'll call this attack underscore local. You can kind of see where this is going already. If 1 and 2. So if 1 is chosen, then we can choose defense local. And if 2 is chosen, we can choose speed local. And on complete, we can get the return node, and we can make the stat struct, attack, defense, just move that down a bit, and speed. Go back to the event graph and drop the function in, connect the dots, and compile and save. Now if we open up the drawer again, go to the widget in the UMG, and we can add a vertical box. So if we go to the UMG, and what we can do is we can right click on the text and wrap with a vertical box, which is going to allow us to add a list, so more items to that below this text box. So we can now add text underneath, and we'll add 3. We can make the loot score size just slightly bigger, and under text block, and under, so the first text blocks we can add a binding, and we'll call this one attack, and we're going to set up a new variable, call it attack, integer, and very similar to what we did with the loot score, I will show its attack. Under the next one, bind, create binding, we'll call it defense, and finally exactly the same thing So what this will do is it will show the 3 numbers, but it doesn't show anything other than the 3 numbers. So we are going to add a small change to all of these, which is off of the return value, drag off and type in format text. And we're going to type in attack, colon, space, and then using the curly brackets, we're going to type in ATK, which gives us another node we can put in. So what this means here is anything in that curly brackets is a variable, and you can input information into that variable. So I'm going to do the exact same thing for the defense and speed. Compile and save. So now if we go into the item, it's not going to show the information because we haven't set the text up, but you should see it says attack 0, defense 0, and so on. In the loot item BP now, at the end of our begin play, where we've got the item details and pointing into the loot widget, what we're going to do is going to get the loot widget and we're going to type in attack. We're going to get set attack at 80 kV, set 80 DEFV, and set SPD. And then break the item stats and then plug them all in. Compile and save. So now when you open it up, we should see they all have stats. One thing we will change very quickly is under the widget UMG, we can untick visible, and that will stop the very brief flash as it starts. And there you have it, guys. We have got a loot system with stats that are generated. Next episode, what we're going to do is we're going to look at equipping these items, and then what happens if we overwrite these items. We're going to have a stat screen or just a UMG widget on the screen itself, just to show our current stats, and you'll be able to see that you can min-max from there on. So thank you very much, guys, for watching, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.